Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. I am Olakunle Kasumo. Ofili is someone you might describe as a star in Nigeria's publishing sector. He pioneered the revolutionary Okada Books, which is leading the way in promoting digital publishing and reading. Recently at the Sharjah International Book Fair, he was the only Nigerian author and literary activist who was a panelist at the fair. We met him there and had a chat with him about a number of issues ranging from personal to publishing. Enjoy this interview. Okay, Chuku, nice to be with you.
Same. Finally.
We've had this coming for a long time.
Yes.
Thanks for your time. You've been advocating for digital reading, ebooks, moving away from analog and physical books, and for a while. Tell me a bit more about this and what has inspired you in this direction.
I mean, for me, not enough Nigerian stories are being told. For example, the Sharjah Book Fair, you look at the stalls from different continents, and Africa is probably represented by one stall or two stalls out of all the hundreds of stalls here. So we're not having enough stories being published. Our authors are not being sold across the world internationally. And the problem is that publishing is a luxurious business in Nigeria. For you to become an author, you need to spend about $5,000 to $6,000. And per capita income means that is a very expensive luxury for you to pay. So with Okada Books, it's not just digital that we're trying to do. We're trying to make publishing as easy as possible so that more of our stories are told, so that we can find more Chimamanda Adichie's and more Chinua Achebe. So that's really what Okada Books is driving at. And that's why we're using digital as that platform, because it's very cheap and very affordable.
I've heard you say that the problem in Nigeria is not poor reading culture, as people will often say, but rather difficulty in accessing books,
Yes.
book distribution, and the spread of literature. Can you explain this a bit more?
I believe that books are like food for the mind. And when you go to the street and you see a child that hasn't eaten food, you don't go and say, oh, that child doesn't like to eat food, or that child doesn't have a food eating culture, right? But for reading, we tend to think like that. And I don't know a child that if you give him a book, he would throw it away and do something else. I grew up not liking reading. My mom would just buy books. She would just buy books for bed, and she would just have it in the house. And because the books were around us, I had to read. Because when I'm bored or NEPA takes light, I would pick up the books and I'll start reading. I'm like, wow, this has the whole. So if you give people books, they would read. But our books are so difficult to distribute. We don't have enough. We don't have paper mills in Nigeria. So by the time you get a book, or if you get it, you have to import it. They're selling books for 4,000, 5,000 naira. It's not going to work with our economics of scale. So that is the issue. You talk to, if you can get a book and sell it for 900, 1,000 naira, you're talking about big money. If you go to the north, Sabongari, the Kano market, they're selling these cheap books and it's flying off the shelf. It's just that nobody's tracking the sales, and they're selling it for 500, 600 naira. And that's a community that people say, oh, they're not that rich, but they are reading books in their own house language. So Nigerians do read, but we haven't addressed the problem. I think what is happening is that every single publisher is trying to address the same problem in a different way. And until we come together and stop being afraid of competition or being afraid of market share, because this market is too huge. I mean, there are only five. I mean, we should be coming together and everybody will eat and be very happy. But people are defending territories and and our market is not growing. That's the problem.
How much of an impact can digitalization of books have on education, particularly in countries like Nigeria?
Huge impact. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, we're doing a fundraising with Teach for Nigeria, where we're trying to raise about 5.4 million naira to get books out to the students. And Teach for Nigeria is a non-profit organization. And when they go out in the communities, you have people that haven't eaten. So if a child hasn't eaten, then you definitely know that they can't even afford to buy the books. And because of that, they are having difficulties. Maybe 25% of the students would have books, and the other 75% wouldn't have books. So they have to start sharing, or they have to give assignments in creative ways. So we know that with digital, because of how cheap and affordable it is, any child with a phone, and it doesn't need to be a smartphone, can be able to access digital textbook content on these devices. And I think with that, it can really explode the educational system. But right now, the textbooks are too expensive, and it is definitely not touching the population. I think we have about 20 million, 25 million students, and even more. I'm probably mixing up the numbers, but they just don't have access to books. So we need to do more, and we need to be very radical. It's not just saying, oh, we need to do paper, but we need to do everything and try and get the books to as many people as possible.
Okay, so so for you, the whole digital concept is about easier access, quicker access, cheaper access.
For authors and for readers.
For authors and readers.
Yes.
Why do you think people are not responding as quickly or as committedly enough to that in Nigeria as they ought to? I get that impression every time I listen to you.
I think it's the fear of change. I think even if you look at the UK, for example, digital hasn't quite blown out paperback as they thought. And those are some advanced digital systems. They have Amazon, they have Kobo, Barnes and Nobles doing digital, and paper is still dominant. So for Nigeria, I think that is the fear. We have publishers that would release a book and they will be like, oh yeah, we're going to put it on Okada books, but after the physical books have been sold. And so they bring out a hot book, and after the book is no longer hot, they put it on Okada books. And by then they can't really drive enough sales, and they say, oh, it's not working. So I think that's what we are battling against. But for the authors that see the benefits and the ease of what digital can do, you don't have to manage any inventory. You don't have to deal with termites biting your book, so you don't have to deal with distribution friction. You just put it on one copy, and that same copy is sold thousands of times. They see the opportunity and they jump at it. And you look at a publisher like Moran Publishers, a Kenyan publisher, they proudly have their book. They sell physical and they have their book on 5 different digital platforms, African-owned digital platforms. So and they're making money, right? And if a lot more publishers were as forward thinking as Moran Publishers, we would then see a real uptick in the digital space.
People are defending territories. Is that what you've observed in the publishing sector?
Absolutely.
In Nigeria?
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
It means that we're not, if one person has a problem, it's not being told to everybody else. If one person knows where to print books for very affordable prices, they keep it as as an economic or commercial advantage. Or people would say stuff like, I give the example about, oh, we need to sell our physical stock first before we sell the digital stock. Or people say, oh, I will only put my books here, I don't want it in this thing. And I think we need to democratize everything, because we are at an embarrassingly low point. We are not driving enough sales to be hoarding market. We need to come together aggressively as publishers and say, how can we simplify it? I had a conversation with a guy from India. They've been able to strike a deal with Penguin. And when I was talking with him, I was saying, what if every single one of these bookstores that goes and buys 50 copies of books, 100 copies of books, we all came together and say, Tomi Adeyemi's book has come out, right? We go to this Indian guy, all of us bulk order it to 2,000 copies. We get the 2,000 copy discount, and then we all share everything. Our industry will grow, but everybody is going, one will buy 50, another one will buy 100, another one will buy, and then we start selling these trickles, and the prices never come down. So that's what I'm saying, we need to come together, and we're not doing that.
Why do you think the Nigerian government, state level, federal level, all levels, why do you think they lack the commitment to invest in book festivals, book fairs, and all other major book events in Nigeria?
I don't think we, I don't want to get in trouble, but I don't think we have the right leaders. I don't know when we're going to get the right leaders. Even our educational budget is like 33% short of the requirements, according to, I believe it's UNICEF or one of those bodies. I think they require about 20% or so, but we're nowhere close. In Africa, we're one of the lowest. You look at our youth program, youth ministry, 90% of the money goes into NYSC. So, with that, the money is not already, it's not there. And then, even in addition to that, let's ignore the government and say, okay, corporate bodies. Corporate bodies are not, they are looking for the popular artists and things that would drive sales. It's business for them. So, I don't know why, because I think it should be obvious why you should be invested in books, why you should be invested in education, but we're just not there. And it's not an African problem, because Kenya is invested. Ghana is invested. I met Kenyan publishers and Ghanaian publishers that said they are thriving because their government mandated people read XYZ number of books, 12 books a year, 1 book a month, and they check it. And because of that, publishers are able to thrive. We don't have that in Nigeria. In fact, the Nigerian government tried to introduce a tax on books. So that's it. We can go into political discussions, but they're just not supporting it. I don't think we have the right people yet.
Let's forget about the advantage of access, the advantage of cost, the advantage of easy distribution, and all those many advantages digital books have. And also the fact that you're probably the chief advocates of going all digital. Okechukwu Ofili, what do you prefer to read as a person? Do you prefer to read ebooks or good old physical copies?
I mean, that's a trick.
As an individual.
That's a trick question, because if I say a physical book, my investors will come and they will query me at the next board meeting. So, I mean, I have to say ebooks, but no. In reality, it depends on the book I'm reading. If I'm reading a non-fiction book, self-help book, I prefer the physical book because I like to take notes as I'm reading. But if I'm reading a fiction book, I tend to read a lot of fiction book as an ebook because I can go flip. I don't really need to take notes. It's portable. It's easier. So that's really that's my answer, and that's my honest answer.
Okay.
I prefer physical books sometimes, and I prefer ebooks sometimes.
I have to say, I find your writing very interesting, very engaging. So why do you write like that?
I feel I write like that because Nigeria frustrates me, because I think we dance around issues. So, you can call it the Chinua Achebe style writing. If you read Things Fall Apart the first time, you really don't get what he's trying to say, right? He sort of dances around colonialism and all these things. But it's at I read Things Fall Apart when I was young. It wasn't until I got older I really was like, okay, this is the point he was trying to drive at. He was trying to show how Europeans influence our culture. And for me, I just don't have the patience for that. I want to be like, boom, in your face. This is happening, because I feel, that there's a sense of urgency for every time that we're not doing something as a publishing industry, for example, a child out there, thousands of children out there are dying. And I'm not saying physically, they're dying mentally, and they're just jumping into this cesspool of dead people. So I write with a sense of urgency. I write with a shock value. Like, you have to listen. That's why I said how stupidity saved my life, how intelligence kills. So I think that we don't really have the time to be speaking in proverbs on some issues. If your house is on fire, you're not going to be saying, and our house is on fire. And people don't realize that. And when I call it, I state that I get in trouble. When I call it out, people are very critical to a very demeaning point. Like, I feel that a lot of our festivals have not really done a great job in bringing us together to say, okay, our publishing industry is dead. How can we raise it up? I think we bring ourselves together, we take pictures, we laugh, we dance, we do this, and it's like we're dancing, but we don't realize how dead we are. Look at what is happening here. Like, you imagine, like, I walk here and I'm like, I feel embarrassed. Like, why don't we have this in Nigeria? But we do these things and we celebrate, and we're celebrating what? So there has to be a sense of urgency as to the debt that we are in, and I don't feel that people have that. That's why I have to speak as directly as I can.
Nice to have you here.
Thank
Nice
you
to
very
chat
much.
with you.
Finally.
Thank you. Finally. Thank
Yes.
you. Thanks for your time.
Awesome.